Love this rolling segment here on the show. You send me hot takes, and I use Spencer's scale of agreement to tell you where I'm at. 1 being absolutely not. I gave out a 0 once, but that's not really going to happen again. 10 is I'm in lockstep agreement, or I've said it before. So here's one. Blazer Duck sent in a couple of these hot takes. Dan Lanning will land the #1 recruiting class in the country at least one time within the next 5 years. What do you think? 7. I think 7, not just because of Monica from Friends, but the reason I'm in a solid level of agreement with that is twofold. And I think about 6 months ago, this number might have actually been even higher. Number one, Dan Lanning, when he and his staff have had a full cycle, right? Not counting the 2022 class where they, came in December of 21, and then they brought in Bo Nix and some other guys and such. But, the high school recruiting class kind of fell apart, and I think it was like it was inside the top 25, which I remember saying at the time was indeed good. They have not yet pulled a class outside of the top 10. Haven't done that yet. 2023, top 10. 24, top 5. 25, top 5. So their ability to set that as the baseline expectation has been pretty darn impressive. So if top 10 is your baseline standard of success, this is a staff that has shown, and not every coach, not every staff is like this, by the way. Even those that have come through Oregon, I think Scott Frost famously said a while back how hard it is to recruit in Eugene. Well, he might have just not been a super big time recruiter. And that also might be evidenced by the fact he brought Alex Grinch in to be his defense coordinator, which is one of the most insane things. He's at UCF again to be a head coach, for those that were wondering. And Alex Grinch, USC legend, is his defensive coordinator. Why? I don't really know. So anyway, bringing it back to what I was talking about, the way that this staff has recruited, everybody that covers recruiting, even closer than I do, has said consistently, yeah, staff cares. Yeah, the staff works. Okay, so that's first thing. The mindset, the drive to go out there and generate top classes exists from the staff. Then you ask, well, what sort of resources do they have? I think we all know the answer to that one. The recruiting budget, the NIL budget, anything that you could possibly need. It's all right there. The only perhaps, and this is why it's good that a lot of visits take place in the summer, maybe the worst part about recruiting to Oregon, other than the geography, is the weather. You bring a guy in and it's 52 degrees and raining. Yeah, it's maybe not the best day for a visit. But a lot of visits take place in the summer. It's usually pretty nice. So, plenty take place in the fall, where it's also usually pretty nice. Thankfully, not a lot of visits happen from like November to March. That wouldn't be the best way to showcase Oregon's campus and whatnot, but the relationship building, the facilities, the commitment, all that stuff is all there. So if top 10 is your baseline standard for success, then kind of like, my baseline standard year in and year out in a 12-team playoff for Oregon is you make the playoff. That's a yearly expectation. And on the recruiting trail, you pull a top 10 class. That should happen every year. If it doesn't, that's a regression, step down, there can be a lot of circumstances make me feel one way or the other about it, but overall, that's where my head is at. So when you couple that with results that are continuing to grow and progress, Dan Lanning's teams have won more games than the year before every season. It was 10 wins, 12 wins, 13 wins. Now you've got a Big Ten championship. Now you've got to win over Ohio State. You keep cycling those things annually. You keep piling them on. People are going to take notice. Oregon already has an established brand. Recruiting people like Brian, who comes here on the show all the time, talks about how there are kids in middle of the nowhere Georgia, back on the East Coast. There's something in their brain that clicks with Oregon. And yeah, it's the Nike uniform connection sort of deal. That's a good thing. That's a good thing because it's a positive relationship people can put in their heads. So when you put all that together, yeah, I get to a 7 on this particular take, Blazer Duck, because I think the infrastructure is there. This isn't easy, by the way. This isn't going to be Oregon's going to pull a bunch of number one classes, but they've had the top ranked recruiting class throughout the course of a cycle before. I mean, they even had that earlier this cycle. It was very, very early on. But, back when Willie Taggart got hired, Oregon had the number one class for a while until that whole thing fell apart. But the recruiting standard has been set. I don't think it's unrealistic whatsoever. Am I expecting it? Not necessarily, but I definitely won't be shocked if they have a class where they get there. Because when you continue to add results on the field, that's really the biggest differentiator between Oregon and the other programs they go up against. Georgia can say we've won national championships. Alabama can say we've won national championships. Texas can say we won a national championship back in 2005. That's the only thing that Oregon's missing results-wise on the field. So I think it's all there. I will say it is harder when USC recruits like this. Not impossible. Definitely not impossible. It is significantly tougher. There is a noticeable difference between recruiting 2 years ago and recruiting now because of what USC is doing and how much Oregon has dipped into Southern California to pull kids out of that footprint. That used to be all USC. Trojans, of course, trying to recapture that back. It's going well so far for them in the class of 2026. They have the number one class. They have 27 kids committed. I talked about it the other day on Locked On College Football with Brian if you want to hear more on that. So, yeah, I'm a 7 on the first one. Another one from Blazer Duck. Hot take. As long as Dan Lanning is Oregon's coach, Oregon will be playing in the Big Ten championship game 75% or more of the time. Okay. 3. This is a 3. If that happens, Lanning would be on a heck of a run. But what you have to consider is not just that Penn State is a really good program. Oh, I didn't even mention Ohio State. Right. They're cut. Oh, wait. When Michigan is operating full force, they're on a national championship level. And they, like Oregon, I think Oregon's a better team than Michigan this year. In 2026, I think Michigan's going to be really good. So every single year, you have got 4 elite programs, tier 1, playoff or bust expectation caliber programs. Michigan can fluctuate a bit. We saw that last year, but that was also amidst a coaching change. Once things stabilize for Sherrod Moore a little, they're expecting to be in the Big Ten championship every other year. They won it three or 4 straight years going into this past season when, of course, Oregon went and won it. Now, you didn't say win the Big Ten championship game, but you still said get in. But you've got, when you factor in scheduling and how much that rolls around, Oregon's never going to play all 3 of those teams in the same year. Rob Mullins would chew somebody's ear off in an unpleasant manner on the phone if they looked at their schedule and said, wait, we're going to Penn State and Michigan and hosting Ohio State? What? Like that's not going to happen. So what that creates is tiebreaker scenarios where you can't always rely upon, you have to win 11 games to guarantee you get in. 10 games, maybe you can get there. But basically you're saying 75% or more of the time, Oregon's going to win 11 or 12 games in the regular season. I have high expectations for the program as long as Dan Lanning is in charge. That's pretty high. So 6 times in an 8-year span, 3 times in a 4-year span, no. I don't expect that. Would love to see it, of course. Do not expect that. And it has nothing to do with Oregon. It's just that other programs, it turns out, have money, have good coaches, and are capable of winning a lot of football games. So, yeah, I'll put that one at a 3 because making it 3 times in a 4-year span would be pretty incredible. I think they've got a solid shot to do it this year, but they're not in control of that aside from the Penn State game. Now, if they beat Penn State, I'll talk about that game more later. But let's say they lose to Penn State this year. They could go 11-1. They could miss the Big Ten championship game. They don't play Michigan. They don't play Ohio State. Those teams, of course, play each other. Let's say Ohio State finally beats Michigan again, and Penn State beats Oregon. Your Big Ten championship is Ohio State and Penn State, and Oregon could be sitting there at 11-1 on the outside looking in of the Big Ten championship game. So there are just a lot of variables there, and I haven't even mentioned USC getting to a conference championship level. Maybe a Nebraska or a Michigan State could pop into the fold every now and then. Yeah, that's a hot take, all right. But that's the nature of the segment.